We have in our midst today one of India's best known oral surgeons, Dr. Mukul Padge, who is teaching, who is practicing in hospitals and, of course, in private practice in Mumbai. We've been seeing, Mukul, we've been seeing a lot of cases of mucormycosis which have been reported in the recent past. When was the first one you saw? What is your experience with it? And then we can go into the other questions to follow.
Yeah, see, mucormycosis has been a deadly fungal disease since long. But now, presently, what we are seeing is a wave of mucormycosis post-COVID infections. And the first I think I saw was in July 2020, June 2020, in fact. And that time it was new. But now we have realized that there is a definite correlation between the post-COVID mucormycosis and the COVID infection which the patient had. And it's been what we see in these particular patients, oral surgical wise or dental wise, is there's sudden mobility of teeth, there's abscesses formation, there is numbness on the lip or something like that. So any abnormal sign which you see in a patient, you should be, keep your antennas up to think about something more than what meets the eye. And so, especially if these patients, especially if these patients have been on high steroids for their COVID treatment, then they form an even more susceptible host.
So again, I was going to come to that question. What are the predisposing factors that you have seen? We know that there's immunosuppressant drugs and diabetes are the two main, but can you just elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, see, COVID per se only is immunosuppression, so it causes a lot of immunity loss. And when a patient is diabetic per se or on any other immunocompromised condition, and given steroids also during this COVID period, and they become an ideal host for this particular fungi to proliferate and grow. And it really grows along the aerodigestive tract normally. So it's more seen in the maxilla, goes through the sinuses and into the orbital space also. So any patient of diabetes especially or any kind of immunosuppression has had COVID should definitely raise alarms to look for any kind of. And now it's been also linked to the oxygen flow which was given during the COVID period of time.
Yeah. So again, let's come to the etiological factors now. One was the predisposing factors. Now let's look at the etiological factors. What do you think is the cause of the sudden spurt of mucormycosis?
Yeah. To be honest, no, the cause is not found, or how this fungi reaches the sinuses or the maxilla is not found. They have blamed it on the oxygen cannulation, they have blamed it on whatever, poor oral hygiene, whatever it may be. But to be honest, the cause is not important. Getting to know that it is there, looking for the right pertinent signs and getting them treated is, I think, more important than how it actually got there.
Would you think that the sterilizing protocol or the cannulas that will be reused will be a cause? Because if that is the cause, then maybe simple precautions will reduce the incidence of the disease.
Yeah, but as I said, that a lot of researchers are trying to find out what exactly is the cause, and they have blamed it also on improper humidification of the air when they give the oxygen, or the water which is used for humidification may have some fungus, or the cannulas are not changed from one patient to the other, etc., etc. But this is still, I feel, hypothetical, and they have not really come down to a particular point which can pinpoint it that this is the cause of the fungi.
And how much time do you find post-COVID that these infections come up to you? And
yeah, in my personal experience, I feel what I have seen is normally in 6 to 7 weeks post-COVID is this things. Though I have a lot of friends and colleagues, especially in the interior of Maharashtra and our country, who have talked of COVID who've talked of mucor during the COVID phase itself. And they have had to go and operate those patients even though they were COVID positive. But in my experience, whatever little I have seen is normally 6 weeks after COVID is what they have seen this.
And even though this may be anecdotal, but was there a raised HB1AC at that point that they saw? Was that the main predisposing factor, or there is no correlation?
No, in my patients there was no HB. Of course, out of the 10 patients I may have done, about 5-6 were diabetic themselves, so they did have a high HB. But the remaining 4 had only steroid doses which were used during treatment, were not diabetic pre-COVID and were not diabetic post-COVID either.
Yeah, so one of the main reasons could be immunosuppression because of high steroid during the COVID pandemic. I mean, if the patient is infected with COVID. Okay, so what would be the diagnosis? So two things, diagnosis, treatment, and then what should dentists look for in their practices? So, if you
So
could-
diagnosis, as I told you, if you have sudden suppuration or pus formation, abscesses, and otherwise relatively healthy looking gingiva, or patient complains of sudden stuffy nose or paresthesia over the upper lip or the lower lip, should raise alarms and fetid odor and blackening of mucosa is what they say, but very few cases normally see. You see also exposed bone. So any such condition which post-COVID the patient comes to a dental clinic, the dentist should not immediately go ahead and just treat it like a routine patient, but think about also more than what he sees. Secondly, the few patients of mandible mucormycosis which I have seen, all those patients have had some dental treatment which was immediately post-COVID. I mean, they had some dental pain, so they got discharged from the hospital and did dental treatment. So my suggestion will be that ideally for a period of 4 to 6 weeks post-COVID, avoid kind of invasive dental procedure like an extraction or an implant, unless it's really going to relieve the patient of a lot of pain. And if it is then you must keep a watch on the healing of that particular patient and warn the patient of the possible.
Would you say that for diabetics only, or you would say that as a thumb rule for everybody?
I would say that as a thumb rule for all post-COVID patients for at least 4 to 6 weeks, unless you're going to relieve them of severe.
Some emergency
Yes,
a
yes.
procedure comes up to.
Yes, absolutely.
What are the so
No,
if the
that-
patient
yeah,
suspects,
yeah.
if the patient suspects that, the doctor suspects that the patient may have mucormycosis, what should he do? Who
Yeah.
should he refer the patient to?
Yeah, an oral maxillofacial surgeon, of course, or an ENT surgeon. See, the basic diagnosis is made out of fungal swab. They take a swab and send it for potassium hydroxide, KOH mount, it is called, and the fungi are seen on that KOH mount. So that makes a quite quick diagnosis of whether the patient does have. See, early diagnosis is the key to save the patient from a lot of, not only fatality, mortality, but also a lot of morbidity. The patient loses the eye, a lot of things. So I think as soon as you see such a thing, you should be referred out, or if you are competent enough to do a KOH mount yourself, you can just swab and send it.
I mean, it's a swab.
Yeah,
If
yeah.
we train enough people,
Yes.
and we could do an online training for them.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, that's something that we could look at, and that is what I would recommend, and that's what we are now instituting in our practice. Is to take a KOH swab and you send it to the lab,
Yeah.
and once you confirm that, then you could look at the next step,
Absolutely.
which would be.
Now the treatment of this is the patient needs to undergo CT scan of his paranasal sinuses and the orbit as well as an MRI. Because the MRI delineates it far better than a CT scan, but a CT scan will show the amount of destruction of bones. So once we do that, it has to be you have to remove all these denuded dead bone, remove them. I'm talking of maxilla and mandible. I'm not talking of the sinuses. Sinuses can also go in for open drainage or a FES, they call a functional endoscopic sinus surgery, and clear out all this fungi and dead looking bone tissue and allow it to heal well post surgery. So this is what we do even in the mandible. Remove the dead bone, remove the teeth which are mobile, remove them off and allow them to heal and induce some fresh bleeding to allow.
And typically,
And sorry, you also have to augment this with amphotericin or any other antifungal agent.
which by the way is not available at this
Yes,
point.
yes,
There's a
yes.
big bit of a
Yes.
shortage of amphotericin
It's
right
bound
now.
to happen.
Yeah, that was bound to happen because again, people are seeing a lot many more cases than we would anticipate before. What would be typically the healing period for this, and what should be the alarm bells that ring at the time when the healing is not proper?
Yeah, see, now again, as I said, if the debridement is thorough, thorough debridement is more possible sometimes in the mandible, in the maxilla, because of multiple sinuses, you allow them for drainage, so good amount of work is done by the antifungal agents also. But all these patients have to undergo regular checkups, and some of them also require regular debridement again at a later date to make sure that they clear up all the sinuses. So if, in case you still after doing initial debridement and starting antifungal, you still have some kind of mucus seal in your swabs, you must go ahead and debride again.
Okay. So again, thank you very much, Mukul. That was very informative. We're going to put this on the internet space, and hope that a lot of dentists will benefit, which I'm sure they will. And we will then put up a video. The next would be for a KOH swap.
Fine. Thank you.
Okay.
My pleasure.
Thanks again.